Let me go to the lines. We're starting in Cape Town. Andrew on the line. Good morning, Andrew.
I'd just like to support Dr. Lloyd completely when he says that nuclear is the safest source of energy. It is. So it is by miles. Much safer than wind, for example. So if you look at Fukushima, here was this earthquake that killed 25,000 people. The nuclear disaster killed nobody. Nobody died because of the radiation. And this is the same as the worst ever nuclear accident in the USA, which was 3 Mile Island, also killed nobody. Whereas when I look at wind, I find per megawatt hour of electricity generated, wind kills at least 40 times more people than nuclear power. Moreover, wind has terrible environmental problems that nobody wants to talk about. For example, in the mining of neodymium, which is used in the generators of wind turbines, it's mined in China. The terrible long-lived pollution around these mines, which is causing cancer and death amongst the populations there. But worst of all with wind is it's so unreliable, it's essentially useless. I was unlucky enough to be in Europe in December last year with record cold. In that time, when there's record demand for electricity, tens of thousands of wind turbines stretching all the way in northern Europe, from Ireland to Germany, were producing next to no electricity.
I'm going to ask my guest to respond to you, Andrew. I thank you very much in Cape Town. Mike is in Setchfield. Good morning to you, Mike.
What worries me about all of these debates is that we assume that we need large centralized solutions. In fact, I believe very firmly that we should be looking at smaller solutions, and Sedgefield is today doing just that. We have started a program to install solar-driven electricity supply in low-cost housing. The first one is going in this very afternoon. And I think it's time to abandon the thought of 100-megawatt solar power plants in the Northern Cape. Nobody ever talks about how much money it costs to turn that electricity into AC, transform it, transfer it to where it's needed, and all of those costs. Nobody talks about any of these costs, and I believe we have to get back to small-scale solutions.
Okay, Mike, my guest will respond to you. I thank you very much. Let's take Anthony. Anthony is in Oortod Swan. Good morning to you, Anthony.
Yeah, I think it cannot be emphasized enough that the renewables just don't supply base load, and for an economy to work, you have to have base load. And they're disingenuous about sort of fobbing off what Dr. Lloyd has said about base load, that you could get a mix of renewables which would supply this. They just wouldn't. And to actually try and get anywhere near being able to supply base load, what the previous talker has said about the battery storage problems that go with all renewables. You can make it when there's got wind, you can make it when there's got no sun, but how do you store it? It's prohibitively expensive, and we're faced as a country with massively increasing Eskom prices. We've already got that problem. It's more than most people can take. What the renewables don't say is that if we were really to go heavy on renewables like they would like us to do, those Eskom prices would look like a tea party. We'd get 5 times that price. I'd be interested in your comment on that. And that is just undoable in a country like this.
But what should we do then? Are you supportive of the nuclear technology? Because we have a problem, of course, with coal.
Nuclear technology is good. One of the reasons why nuclear technology is made more expensive than it is because of the paranoia about safety. The safety regulations have become over the top, so all that makes it more expensive. But it's nevertheless, as Dr. Lloyd has pointed out, much, much cheaper if you take a life cycle costing than what renewables would cost us. Renewables may come down in price over time, but we don't have to be, South Africa, we don't have to be the experimental station on this. We can't afford that. Let technology be developed, and if it comes in and it's, especially on local scale, as your previous caller has talked about, there are uses for it. But in terms of providing basic load for a country, it's got no chance.
All right, thank you very much, Anthony. Let me hear from Edwin now in Bathurst. Edwin, good morning.
To talk of nuclear energy as clean when it's the most filthy, disgusting thing one can use and makes money for certain multinationals is disgusting. I've got
Edwin.
copies of the Sunday Times of the 4th and the 5th here, Burning Water, Way to a Greener Future. Kalani, I've got a Southern Cape motoring guide, Friday the 24th of June. And a university in Spain is making little cars which go at 30 kilometers an hour for 40 minutes on soda pop and aluminium cans.
Okay, Edwin. Here are the problems. Here are the problems. We have a problem with coal because clearly the emissions are just way over the top, and we cannot afford to continue emitting the way we do when we use coal. Now, we also have a problem with the renewable energy simply because of the base load, as people have pointed out. What do we do then?
Well, look, you don't need to use that. We're burning fossil seaweed, which Israel, I'm just going a little bit round the corner here, Israel put on the sand to produce grasses and things, because and then when you get a cloud full of moisture, it'll precipitate, not on the red hot sand.
Okay.
Let's ask our Muslim friends this. Why don't the Sunnis and Shiites put the same thing on this instead of our burning it and so on, and get their enormous amounts of land going?
Okay.
As Richard Simbad Baker had the Copts, the Catholics, the Jews, the Arabs all pushing the desert back. What's happened now? Vested interest doesn't want it. They want control. Coal
Edwin?
is healthy. We've got wind energy. We've got solar energy. If you just look at this, write this down with your pencil. The World of Free Energy. The World of Free Energy by Peter Lindemann, Lindemannsc, and you'll get a 10-page essay with patents and God knows what, going back 150 years of things we're not allowed to use because of banks and things.
All right, Edwin, I've written that down, but also I'm going to just keep your pen and paper handy. I'm going to give you my email address again, so please do email me the stuff a little later on. I'm going to give that email a little later on.
The Forum at 8 with Olani Gwala.
My guests will respond to your comments in a minute, but let me read some SMSs. There is Richard Mulewa in Hartbeespoort who says, while debating nuclear versus renewable, let's factor in our planet that is burning. Another one says, wind and solar are not necessarily free sources of energy. Most of South African petrol comes from coal, but its price is based on oil. We will be paying for free wind. Mulife says, not only is nuclear safe, but the work ethic of employees and the management in nuclear plants is way above any standard. There's Blessing in Hillbrow who says, do these energy sectors do EIAs? Which one is better in terms of the environmental impact assessment studies? All right, let me just get responses. I'll start in Cape Town again. Dr. Lloyd, specifically would like you to respond to what Jason was talking about. Jason says, well, there are issues of nuclear waste, and a couple of people have raised that issue, but also saying that if you were to invest just a little bit of what already goes into nuclear technology and invest that in renewable sources, you'd be for a way.
Well, I think, first of all, as regards nuclear waste, one has to remember that it gets, like the ash of a fire, it gets cooler and cooler. After about 1,000 years, it is almost safe to handle. So the problem goes away. Where, in contrast, where you take some of the waste that he was speaking about, for instance, he was talking about cadmium, solar cells. Cadmium is a poison that lasts forever. And the question of the waste of a solar cell has been raised. I think Andrew, was speaking from Cape Town, did mention some of the wastes from the renewable energy side of things. They last forever. They really do. Whereas the nuclear waste actually gets cooler and cooler, just like the ash of a fire. I
can tell you that Riani is shaking her head as you speak. Finish, and I'm going to come to her.
Right. And as regards the ability to distribute power, it's a great idea. We've actually done some work on a number of photovoltaic systems for domestic use. They're fine as long as your wife doesn't mind being told that she can't turn the kettle on while you're watching television and things like that. They're low-power solutions. It's much, much better if you've got a grid where you can actually make photovoltaic power, feed it into the house when you can, but also draw from the grid when you need to. Taking people completely off-grid is a very difficult thing and a very expensive solution.
All right. Riania, you wanted to respond?
To the waste issue, after 1,000 years it's almost safe to handle. 1,000 years is a very, very long time. And even then, the waste consists also of heavy metals that will be as risky as, for example, cadmium and other stuff that's also not nice. I have a few things I want to respond on. I think it was Andrew who was talking about the nuclear energy being the safest source of energy. And nobody was killed in the Fukushima disaster. I always get angry hearing people say that. I would invite Andrew to talk to the Japanese people in the area that has been evacuated, to talk to the people who live in the area where they are not able to grow their own vegetables anymore. They are not able to grow their own rice anymore. Because simply the area has been contaminated and will be for the next 100 years. So those people are devastated. And nobody might have been killed immediately. But the radiation has an effect. It has an effect on the people who live there now, but it has a long-term health effect as well. With regard to the mining, of course, it was already pointed out that for solar and wind you need to mine materials to actually build it. But for nuclear you have to mine uranium as a fuel. Without uranium fuel you don't have nuclear energy. And the uranium mining industry is also not a nice industry. It's very polluting, it's very devastating for the local communities.
All right, we're coming towards the end of the program. I've got less than a minute now, but I really need both of you to wrap up. Perhaps starting with you, Dr. Lloyd. As South Africa, clearly this is a confusing discussion for ordinary South Africans like me. What would you recommend?
I think trust your engineer. He's.
I think that's what they said when they were building those walls along the sea in Japan.
We will make mistakes. We will apologize. We'll do our very, very best to make certain that you have power, that it keeps going, and that SAFM keeps on the air. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Rihanna?
I want to say the energy revolution is already happening. Look elsewhere in the world. The renewable energy is booming. South Africa should use this opportunity and go there now.
All right. I thank you both for coming through and talking to us this morning. Thanks indeed. A fantastic discussion. Rihanna Teule of Greenpeace. She actually is a senior climate and energy campaigner as well as a nuclear specialist. And in Cape Town, Dr. Philip Lloyd, Professor of Engineering at the Cape Peninsula University, also, of course, representing the engineering faculty.